Welcome to Instant Deck Techs. The aim of this series is to give you a short, concise guide on how to build a certain deck. It won't cover every card, but we'll go through all the categories and go over the types of cards needed to make the deck work. Any card mentioned will be down in the description below. The commander of this deck is Araumi of the Dead Tide. She is 1 blue-black for a legendary creature Merfolk Wizard. She is a 1/4. She has the activated ability, tap and exile cards from your graveyard equal to the number of opponents you have. Target creature card in your graveyard gains Encore until end of turn. The Encore cost is equal to its mana cost. The aim of this deck is to fill our graveyard with creatures that we want to bring back with the Encore ability. The creatures we are bringing back with Araumi will take a lot of the regular slots in our deck. They will be our card draw, our removal, some of our ramp, and our win conditions. Having effects on creatures will, generally speaking, be better for this deck. However, there will still be some non-creature cards to run, as we still need to make sure the deck functions early in the game and when we don't have Araumi in play. For a non-creature card to get into the deck, it needs to have an effect that is either more powerful than we would find on a creature, or be more consistent. Of your non-land spells, I would recommend at least 2/3 of them are on creatures, so that would be around 40 cards out of the 100 card deck. We need to get a lot of cards into our graveyard in order to make the most of Araumi. For this we want to run some dedicated mill effects. We're looking for either enter the battlefield effects, or effects we can activate again and again. There are some non-creature effects in this category. Mesmeric Orb and Altar of Dementia are probably the best of these effects not on a creature. In total, I would probably want to run at least 12 of these effects, but you could easily run more. A lot of self-mill effects will be on some of our other cards as well. For card draw, we want to look for creatures that draw a card when they enter the battlefield or when they die. Enter the battlefield effects will be better as it will give us more things to do immediately, with Fairy Miscreant being the best, as when encored back it'll draw us 3 cards. For non-creature card draw, look for cards that also put things into the graveyard as well. We want to get the most out of our commander, so we will play some effects that untap her, so we can encore multiple times a turn. I would still only run between 2 and 4 of these effects, as they don't have much use outside of this. As a note, Ampheto Alchemist does go infinite with Mesmeric Orb, and lets you put your whole library into your graveyard as it can target itself. There is a number of creatures that will give us some good one-shot ramp when they enter the battlefield. These will give us some very explosive turns. Deranged Assistant and Pitiless Plunderer are probably better played out than encored. The amount of these you will play will depend on how much artifact ramp you have. We do still want to run some artifact ramp, so we can get our commander out earlier, or again if it is removed. I wouldn't run less than 6, and I would run more if you're not running as much of the creature ramp. In total, you want between 8 and 12 ramp effects over both categories. There are some free discard outlets that will also work well in the deck. These work especially well with dredge cards, as we can instantly discard a dredger before we draw a card, and then replace the card draw with the dredge effect. This will put more cards into our graveyard. While Pack Rat isn't a free discard outlet, it is especially fun with Encore. This is a section I personally love and wanted to mention it, but you don't have to run it if you're not a fan of dredge. There are some tutor effects that will help put specific cards into our graveyard. The creature effects will generally be better in this deck, and most likely will be more budget options as well. Black gives us plenty of creatures that will deal with our opponent's threats. For synergy, I would recommend running the below. Encoring these creatures as well should help clear up our opponent's boards. I would want at least 8 cards in this slot. In any self-mill deck, I would always recommend running Perpetual Timepiece, as it mills and also protects the key cards in our graveyard. As the deck revolves around our commander, I would protect her with Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots, and also consider Command Beacon and Netherborn Altar in case the command attacks ever gets too high. For our win conditions, we want to run some dedicated big effects that scale well with the game. Run your favourite creatures with enter the battlefield, attack, or death effects. You want at least 8 cards in this slot, but effectively, once your other bases are covered, these are the effects that will fill up the rest of the deck. Encoring back a creature with Myriad will also escalate very quickly, and cards that steal from our opponents when they hit will give us a ton of value. Because these creatures are legendary, the legendary will mean if they're encored, all but one of them will die. However, they're still worth running as their ETB effects or death effects are exceptionally good, but I wouldn't run more than 4 legends in the deck. You can also consider running cards that drain your opponents when our creatures die, as you'll get a trigger for every card you encore back when it dies at the end of turn. Sir Conrad will also hit our opponents when we encore a creature, and then again when they die. I wouldn't recommend running more than 4 of these however, as they're not so useful when they're in the graveyard. Having Wonder in the graveyard will give all of our threats flying to help get damage through. I would also recommend Dread Return, as we can sack 3 creatures that were going to die anyway, and cheat something else into play. These effects all keep our creatures around longer than they should, by being able to stop them from dying. If you're running these effects, I would run less creatures that have dies triggers, as they will become less consistent. In Commander Legends, there are other cards that naturally come with Encore. Our Commander will make these cheaper, but will also let us Encore multiple creatures a turn if we have enough mana. Play these cards if you like their effects. If you're finding your self-mill is working a little too well, you can consider running these cards. These will win you the game when you have successfully churned through your deck. While Nexus of Fate doesn't say you will win the game, having it be the only card in your deck means you can take infinite turns. Run some, or all of this package if this is something you think is fun. We can run some utility lands in the deck. Generally look for lands that will help us mill creatures, so we always have ammunition for Araumi. For the rest of the mana base, run the best dual lands you have available to you. Thank you very much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and let us know down below if there's any decks you would like to see a deck tech on.